one of the things that we learned is that there's nothing wrong with pain. It's a powerful catalyst for change. It's a powerful tool, but you learn to, and it's not that you don't have compassion and empathy, but you recognize it serves a purpose.
Welcome to The Healing Cocoon by Urban Ascension. I'm Jacoby Gray, your host and healing advocate, bringing you transformational stories each week to inspire personal change in your life and help you feel more supported as you embark on the healing process itself. Through the study of coaching, kinesiology, holographic kinetics, meditation, Reiki, the chakra system, and many other modalities, I've learned how to release the blocks that were holding me back. Now I'd love to help you do the same. Deactivating your triggers and your traumas means you activate your happiness, so you can experience more alignment, connection, clarity, love, fulfillment, synchronicity, and success than you ever thought possible. So from dark nights of the soul to radical breakthroughs and rebirth, this is the Healing Cocoon podcast. Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome back to the Healing Cocoon podcast for another week. Today's guest is the internationally respected healer, medium, and author of 3 incredible books, Robbie Holz. I first heard about Robbie's books when I did my holographic kinetics training in June of last year. It's an ancient Aboriginal healing technique, and on my first day of the week-long course, everybody was getting to know each other and asking questions about how they came to be there. I noticed a lot of people said they developed a curiosity for learning more about Aboriginal healing from reading 2 of Robbie's books, Secrets of Aboriginal Healing and Aboriginal Secrets of Awakening. I made a mental note to read them, which I ended up doing last October, and I absolutely devoured them. I loved them, and I had the most impacting personal revelations. It was like the light bulb suddenly went off in certain areas of my life that I had been desperate for change. In Secrets of Aboriginal Healing, Robbie recounts the story of her partner, acclaimed physicist Gary Holz's journey to the Australian outback, where he was synchronistically led to learn a 60,000-year-old healing technique from the Aboriginal tribespeople that not only led to his full spiritual awakening, but his healing from multiple sclerosis. In her second book, the memoir Aboriginal Secrets of Awakening, Robbie recounts her own journey embodying these Aboriginal healing techniques during the darkest time in her life. Receiving a blood transfusion after giving birth to her son, Robbie contracted hepatitis C. As a side effect to the experimental treatment she received, she also developed fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, temporary brain damage, and became bedridden for 7 months. At this point, she set off on her alternative healing journey, where she met Gary and started using the Aboriginal methods on herself to completely heal herself from the ailments. The book also depicts her own spiritual quest into the outback to participate in an all-female ceremony with the Aboriginal tribeswomen at their request. Something I could only dream of doing myself, and it was so, as an Australian, so beautiful to read what often I'm not even witness to. So this episode not only covers all of these incredible stories and healing techniques, but we also discuss how pain can be a powerful catalyst for change, stepping out of victimhood, creating a love mindset, bridging the gap between 3D and 5D reality, releasing your triggers, connecting to higher frequencies for manifestation, and Robbie's third book, Angels in Waiting, which teaches you how to reach out to your guardian angels and spirit guides. This is truly an inspiring and uplifting story, as well as one you can do for yourself should you choose to adopt these techniques in your own life. I'm so incredibly blessed to have Robbie on the Healing Cocoon. She is such a bright light and portal for personal transformation, so please settle in and let yourself soak in her words.
When I delivered my son back in 1985, I had a really rough delivery. It was over 30 some hours. And so they gave me a blood transfusion. And back in the United States in 85, they didn't have testing for hepatitis C. They certainly do now, but they didn't then. And I didn't know that the blood transfusion that I was given had hepatitis C in it. And they called it non A, non B. And the hepatitis almost killed me. Fortunately for me, I live in the Seattle area in Washington state, and some of the best experiments for hepatitis C were being conducted in Seattle. So the doctors who were doing research for cures kind of took me under their wing and gave me experimental treatments to keep me alive. And then the experimental treatments almost killed me. And at that point, I had almost died twice, and I still had hepatitis C raging. I now had fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, and temporary brain damage. And there was nothing that Western medicine could offer me. So that's when I started looking into alternative methods and discovered that there are all kinds of answers out there, especially within us, right? If you listen to that intuition and be guided by it. So I ended up doing what the doctor said at the time was incurable. I healed myself completely of hepatitis C. They've tested me for a long, long time and said it's gone, it's healed. I I healed the chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, the brain damage, and I mean, I was in bed for about 9 months, couldn't get out of bed, and the brain damage was so severe, I couldn't figure out how to get water out of a tap. I couldn't figure out whether the tag to your slacks go in the front or the back. I mean, it was really, I couldn't remember what I was talking about. I couldn't finish a sentence because I couldn't remember long enough. So to heal all of that was quite a recovery. This was back in 85 to 90. And then I ended up healing myself, and I had this passion to help others how to heal as well. And that's what put me on this path. And come to find out, and that's another story, but I ended up using the same methods that the Aboriginal healers had taught my husband. And they gave us, we call it the secrets of Aboriginal healing. They gave us those secrets and asked us to take it out into the world because they said that we don't really understand, quote unquote, civilized culture doesn't really understand how healing works. We're really missing the boat. And so we were typically working with the physical symptoms and not recognizing that there was more to it. So that's why they gave us their healing information. And it was really what I ended up using to heal myself. So they parallel.
Okay, so being an Australian, I am deeply ashamed to say that we are not even connected to the secrets of Aboriginal healing. And even though things are shifting very slowly and culturally, we are making changes to embrace the Aboriginal culture. To sit here hearing an American tell me that you were healed by these secrets is really emotional. And I guess my first question is, having read your book and understanding a bit about your journey, was the hepatitis something you had begun to heal prior to being introduced to the Aboriginal techniques, or was it once you met your husband and once you were introduced and you went down specifically that route that you discovered complete healing?
Well, I had started going down that road. And then Gary, when I met Gary in 2001, he really helped accelerate that healing process by helping me become much more aware of what the Aboriginal people were teaching us. But this will make you feel a little bit better. Um, I was invited to participate with Aboriginal women, and actually Gary went into the outback. He was a physicist here in the United States, and I think that the reason they selected us to come there to Australia in the outback was because we had no concept of the Aboriginal people at all, no idea, and so we were completely untainted to their history or whatever. The prejudices that people tend to have. And I remember going to the outback and meeting Australians, and they're like, why are you coming to Australia when you have Native Americans there in the United States who are also very powerful? And I had the same reaction you do. It's like, I never even thought of the Native Americans as having healing information because we have these concepts. We're so immersed in our day-to-day living that it didn't occur to us. So I think that that's why Americans somebody from a completely different culture needed to come and understand these secrets to take them out into the world. And we had the ability to do that here in the States. But yeah, and then it made me realize there are the Native Americans also, these indigenous cultures live very close to the earth. They have amazing abilities like the Aboriginal tribes people that we met. So yeah, same thing, just the other side of the ocean.
Yes. So that does actually make me feel a bit better. So Gary had MS and he had a very synchronistic experience that brought him to Australia, where he was allowed to study and have access to something that most Australians don't even, which is the deep heart of the Aboriginal tribes and culture.
Mhm.
What was it that he learned there that he then passed on to you?
Well, he was like me. You had to be brought to your knees before you're willing to open up and see what needs to be changed and do what needs to be done. He had MS. He was in a wheelchair. He'd actually been a quadriplegic for 7 years. He was a globe-trotting physicist. It slowed him down, but it certainly didn't stop him from being a physicist. But he had a diagnosis from the doctors where he had about 6 months left to live. And he was determined to find a way to survive because, like me, he had a young child. He had two children to live for. I had a young child that motivated me to stay alive. He had two children that he just didn't feel like he could leave yet. So that's when he found out about the Aboriginal tribes people and that they had amazing healing abilities, and was able to contact this tribe. And they invited him to come and stay with them, and then they revealed their healing secrets to him during this brief visit with them because they were guided to do so. And like I said, they felt that this information needed to get out into the world. But, you have to remember that Gary was this physicist, very scientific, very black and white linear thinking. And it was a real stretch for him to go into the outback in his wheelchair, uh, desperate, with the tribe to find answers. And they did help him, in a very short period of time. He was only there like about 2 weeks, but in that time he regained his feeling in his body, which he hadn't had for 7 years. He was able to clumsily walk down that airplane aisle on the way back home. Dramatically changed man, especially emotionally. And they taught him, one of the things they taught him is that there's a lot of gray that exists. It can't be proven, but it exists nonetheless. And for a scientist, this was a major shift. But it dramatically changed his life. He came back a changed man and wanted to take this information out. He got a doctorate degree in immunology and practiced what you would call psychoneuroimmunology, how the mind affects the immune system and the body, and used that to gain more credibility to support teaching this information, and spent the rest of his life really promoting these healing modalities and information.
And so, would you say that that is the basis of those modalities and the information, that it all is in our own minds?
Yes, it's a big part of it. Actually, I would say that there's three aspects to it. Um, and this is what they taught us. If you have an alignment, if you have a disease or an illness or whatever, if you have an alignment of the body, the mind, and the spirit, if they're all aligned with healing, anything can be healed. It doesn't matter what it is. For a lot of people, the emotions are not on board. And the emotions are what very often create the disease in the first place. And the Aboriginal people taught us that it's like a dandelion growing. If you don't get to the root, it's just going to keep coming back again. You can't just pull off the top of a dandelion and expect things to not regrow again like a weed. So they say you've got to get to the emotional core, the emotional root. Now for Gary, he had MS, multiple sclerosis, and he had actually become numb physically. And it started that he had numbed himself emotionally because he had a very abusive childhood. He had an alcoholic, abusive father, and he got really good at numbing himself emotionally until he literally numbed himself physically. And he needed to learn how to forgive his father to be able to start healing that MS, which is what the Aboriginal people taught him and helped him do. And that's when he was able to start feeling again and start walking in a limited way. So that's part of is if you have to pay attention to, here's an example. We everyone knows how when you have grief, you hold it in your chest area, right? That's where the emotion tends to be held and suppressed. And if you have a genetic tendency, a predisposition for breast cancer or heart disease, and you're adding that grief and it's not being released, then you are setting yourself up to possibly create physical problems in that area. So the Aboriginal people were telling us it's about letting go of that grief, letting go of what is creating a toxic situation in the body, and then the mind becomes on board with the healing. Okay. And so that's when you get and the spirit, when I say spirit, if the soul is involved in this, and that's something we don't think about. I don't know if you think about it where you are, but we don't think about it here. It's certainly not part of our Western civilization culture. Does the soul want to teach you something? Which it certainly did with me. Having those experiences put me on this path of becoming a teacher and a writer and helping people understand how to heal. So the soul was on board with helping create this. And it wasn't quite on board with healing it immediately until I needed to learn what I needed to learn. And then it became aligned with healing. Okay. So you have to have the body, the emotions, and the soul all aligned with healing. And if they are, then anything can be healed.
And is that why in the book, Gary will talk about in the practice that you will choose, what not choose, but you will, I guess, access the person's spirit and speak to them and find out if their soul actually wants to be healed right now. And if they don't, you'll actually deny them.
Right. Or how much we're supposed to help. Right. Because
Okay,
if the
yeah.
person's not ready, then, we will ask how much are we able to help, because we're conduits for the healing. And so they will work through us. But one of the examples that we gave in the book, the Awakening book, was a child who was blind. And what we discovered was it was the soul's intention for that child to be born that way and to stay that way. And even though he was able to help that child gain a little bit of sight and other things, the eyes were rolling, and it was very disturbing to see this child with the eyes just rolling all over it, not together. And so he was able to just hook those eyes back up through this healing energy that he was a conduit for. But it was, and we thought that the child was able to see a little bit, but it never regained 100%. But it was never the soul's intention to gain 100%. So we were able to help as much as the soul allowed. And that's very important, because you need to have permission. It's not about ego, it's about assisting in the way that's best.
And so how do you reconcile that if you are a religious person who doesn't necessarily believe in souls and spirit world and things like that in the way that I guess we're talking about it? Do you think that belief system then becomes a block to being able to heal yourself through modalities like the Aboriginal techniques?
Sure, it can, and everybody has different belief systems, and I honor that. The Aboriginal tribes people taught us. They would call it. They might call God the big guy, but it's a genderless, tongue-in-cheek term for a higher power, whatever that means to you. And so, people can pray and pray and pray for God to heal them, and that is creating that energy. That's creating. It does have an effect, and especially when you get a lot of people praying for something together, right? Praying for the healing of something, it does have an effect, and the soul can make shifts and changes. But it's really, we might have different concepts, but it really comes down to the same thing, right? A higher consciousness, a higher power. And so, well, you can use God, the big guy, your soul, whatever, but they're really interchangeable.
And as a healer, how do you energetically, I suppose, protect yourself or keep your boundaries when, say, someone comes to you and say they've got cancer and it is their soul's wish that they learn a lesson in this lifetime through incurable cancer, and so you help them as much as you can, but that person then has to go on their own journey of their own learnings, but you know that that's deeply painful and that they're going through a dark night of the soul and they may not even find peace before they die. As a healer, how do you
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think one of the things that healers, it would behoove us to learn is that just because we know the answer or we know how to, heal them, doesn't mean we're necessarily supposed to step in and do that. The person needs to ask. I've had very close family members who I knew what they were doing to create such physical maladies, but unless they ask, it's not for me to quote unquote fix them. And you recognize that we're learning through all of these experiences. And I think of this beautiful planet as Earth School. So when you recognize that they're learning and that it's here for a reason, what is it here to teach them? How is it here to help them grow? You realize you might play a part in that, you might not. And that, one of the things that we learned is that there's nothing wrong with pain. It's a powerful catalyst for change. It's a powerful tool, but you learn to, and it's not that you don't have compassion and empathy, but you recognize it serves a purpose. And so you step in and assist in the way that's appropriate, doesn't have ego involved. Again, it's just being sort of the messenger or the conduit. And it's surprising because you'll get people who come to you. One of the examples that we wrote about in the book was a man who was there who just married his wife because they thought he had 6 months to live. He had brain tumors, and they didn't think he was going to survive. And he was there. This newlywed was there in our office, not because he thought we could help him, but because he was appeasing his new mother-in-law, right? And so he didn't want to be there. You could tell neither one of them wanted to be there, but they felt like they needed to do this for the mother-in-law as like a last-ditch effort. And he was actually one of those people who was healed. He had headaches for years, and he walked out of the office an hour later without any headaches for the first time in years. And that's when he realized, okay, this is different. And he ended up completely healing and went back to the doctor, and they did MRIs and scans and found out that the tumors were gone. So it's not necessarily, are they compliant? Do they have the belief system? It's about, that's again where the soul comes into play. He was supposed to go through that experience just like I did because it would change him. And it changed all of them. So
mm,
so you don't try to control the outcome as much as be guided to what's in their best interest, whatever that might be. You might be planting a seed, you might be nurturing it, you might be doing neither one.
okay, and so when someone comes to see you and you have permission to work with them and they're in that sort of, you're accessing, what is the realm? What do you call it? I mean, I guess I would call it the quantum field, but what do you say?
Yeah.
Is it the spirit
That's
world?
yeah. Well, I would say that I have a spirit healing team that
Mm-hmm.
we work together. I'm the human component to the team. I am sort of the translator, the bridge, the conduit, a very humble conduit, just like Gary was. So the healing is coming through the quantum field, whatever you want to call it, through me. And I am, now Gary would direct that healing. He would put his hand on the site, like at the back of their neck or wherever it was. And it didn't matter if it was an animal or it was a person. It's energy is energy. And then you would follow the guidance with what to do and how long and that sort of thing. Um, they also give us insight into what's going on. What are the emotional cores, so that the person knows. And I thought it was interesting that the people who were autistic were the only ones who really knew that Gary was tapping into their subconscious with permission and talking to them. They don't have the filters, and so they knew when Gary was communicating to them. That was a real eye opener for us. Um, so you're allowing them to work through you, and this is again where you have to get the mind out of the way, and they will direct you as to who to help. That's the first thing I ask when people contact me. Again, am I allowed to help them? Do you want me to help them? And then they decide, the team, my spirit team, will let me know if it's a yes or a no. And it might be that they're not ready yet. It might be that we're not a good match, or who knows? There's any number of reasons. But I I become the human member, the physical person, and then they send the energy through me.
Mm. Okay, so when Gary went, excuse me, to the outback, he received the information around that healing is in our own mind, and we need to go to the root of the cause. But also, he had an awakening where he was
Yes.
able to suddenly access a realm that he wasn't before.
Yes.
Uh, at what point in your journey working with Gary did you open up and connect to that world?
Yeah, wow, that's another loaded question. Gary came back from the outback and he started developing the same abilities that the Aboriginal tribes people that he was with had demonstrated, where they can see into the other realms, they can communicate telepathically, they could see inside the body. And so he started communicating to what he discovered was an angelic being. He called her Julie, and she was sort of the one who was communicating with him when he did his healing. So Gary was so good at this. He could see tumors inside people. He could communicate and find out. And then it got to the point where he didn't need to be in the same location. He could do it remotely. All he needed was their name and their city. And then, so I never really tapped into mine. Now, we all have these abilities. It's just a matter of how much are they developed. When Gary passed in 2007, and he lived many years beyond, I think it was 94, he went into the outback and he had 6 months left to live. And he passed actually yesterday, 16 years ago, but he lived well beyond what they thought he would. And I did not see this coming. When he passed, he started showing up every morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, very punctual man. And he would show up. There was an energetic image that I could see of him. And, I was raised in a very conservative, uh, religious upbringing. This was not anything that I was raised with. But it's pretty, again, that you go to the outback, you see stuff. And then Gary showed me these things. He's showing up every day at 8 o'clock, communicating to me from the other side of the veil. And that's when I started developing that ability. And then just gradually over time, over these 16 years, have realized, oh, I have these abilities too. I just didn't know that. So we each can tap into our own inner healing realm and connect to that, and listen to that internal guidance on what to do, what to eat, how to move forward. If is it, what steps do I need to move forward and no longer need this in my life?
And one of the ways, I guess, to be able to, well, the first step to opening up to that is coming out of a victimhood mentality and taking mental responsibility for your own life and saying it all starts with me. And I remember something that profoundly hit me when I read the book, or I think it was this, Secrets of Aboriginal Healing, when Gary was being taught each day a different lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the lessons was there's three kinds of people: a victim, a rescuer who becomes the victim of the victim once they realize they can't save them, and the master. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, I realized my whole life I'd been interchanging between victim and rescuer, but the piece that really hit me was because the rescuer ultimately becomes the victim of the victim. And it was just this moment when my whole life just blew wide open.
Yeah.
And it's those revelations that help you become more responsible for your own life. But how does someone seek a revelation?
You ask for it. You have the intention. And then it comes to you. The teacher appears when the student is ready. You just have the intention. And they're telepathic to your thoughts. You just have the intention. I would like to move beyond this. I would like to not need this in my life. And you recognize that, and this is where it helps to be, I think you let go of the rescuer mentality, whether it's a healer or just with your loved ones or whatever, and have an acceptance when you realize that we're in this classroom and we're all in different classrooms learning different things in different ways at different paces. And there's no judgment about it. you just realize that's what they need for what their brave journey that they signed up for. And so you start having acceptance, realizing this is in their life for a reason. They are in my life for a reason. And it might be that it's about learning acceptance and not judging. It might be that it's about being at peace when there is chaos around me, and recognizing that what the planet is going through is a bit of a dark night of the soul, but it's needed to shift, right? That again, that comes back to that there's nothing wrong with pain. It's a powerful catalyst. And we need to have this awareness on the planet to let go of some of these things that we've been holding on to, let go of some of these fears. And it comes to it also with disease. You have to have an awareness of, how have I created this? Am I willing to let go of that? Because if you hang, your emotions are creating, and there's been many studies to show this, it's a different kind of cell. Dr. Emoto's experiments, water experiments, showed us how it's a different cell, whether it's created with anger or negativity versus love and compassion. It's a very different cell, and it operates differently. One is more of a swampy, sticky environment that's not very vibrant for the body. And the hardest emotions on the body are shame, guilt, self-hatred. Those are really hard on the body. Anger, you would think, would be one of them, but it's not, because it's a quick release. It goes out the hands and the arms. It's that stewing in that guilt, that shame and self-hatred, and it might be very unconscious. That's where it needs to come up, bubble up to the surface again. Whereas the flip side is when you have a lot of emotions that are more love-based. Compassion, gratitude is huge for healing. It creates a different cell. It creates a different energy through the body, through the system. It helps release things. So one will create a toxic, swampy environment. Love-based will create a more loving, thriving, vibrant environment. So that's also, I don't know how we got full circle on that one, but anyway.
No, I love this. I love this. I'm interrupting this awesome chat to tell you about one of my all-time favorite creations, the chakra meditations. A potent combination of yoga nidra, binaural beats, and the chakra system. These meditations are designed to guide you into a deep state of relaxation where your nervous system can totally decompress and create the space for healing. I took my time crafting these meditation scripts because I wanted to make sure they resonated with every ounce of truth, transformation, and light I could hold. Each individual meditation addresses the specific attributes of each chakra and has a soundscape composed by source vibrations that is attuned to the frequency of each chakra as well. So from the main root aspects of prosperity, grounding, and belonging, all the way up to the bliss, self-reflection, and enlightenment of the crown chakra, each meditation is going to take you on an intricately curated journey to energetic freedom. You can download them via the link in the show notes of this episode or on our website, urbanascension.co. That's C-O, not .com, urbanascension.co under the chakra banner. And so when someone is feeling very caught in their own sort of toxic thinking, what are some action steps they can take to creating a love mind state?
I'm glad that you asked that, because that's really pivotal, isn't it? This is what Gary learned, and this is also what I learned, is that we have tremendous help available to us from this quantum field, whatever you want to call it. We were never designed to be doing this alone. We have tremendous help available to us, but because it's a free will planet, and we need to ask for that assistance. Because again, there's nothing wrong with playing in the mud, right? At the back alley, that's what you choose. That's what you're going to experience. But when you ask, thank you. It's not a prayer. It's not a plea. It's a thank you for helping me release this. And you want to pose that in what you want, not what you don't want. That's another thing that our culture tends to do, is we tend to obsess and focus on what we don't want. So it's not about thank you for helping me release the cancer. What you want to say instead is, thank you for helping me create a healthy, thriving body as much as possible. That gives them permission to step in and help you do that. Thank you for helping me. It's not about, thank you for helping me let go of this judgment. Instead, you would want to say, thank you for helping me find peace, acceptance, joy, ease, grace. That there's a different, you see that the focus is different. So when you ask for that, they will help you with that. It's a tremendous how much help we have. And the Aboriginal tribes people taught Gary, angels have always been part of your culture. And I did research on it and found angels are in every culture all through history throughout the world. And there are angelic beings available to help you. There's tremendous amount of help, not just angelic beings, but yeah, it's there. And they will also guide you, send the healing. They might provide that clarity to you, not exactly the way you thought it was going to be. That's where you got to keep the mind out of the way, but it'll come the way it needs to come. And you may want that corner piece of the puzzle, but you may have to get other pieces first. And I think the biggest problem people have, one of the biggest problems, is they think they're not being responded to. They're like, oh, nobody's listening, nothing happened, I'm still dealing with whatever. It's happening, but it's just not happening in the time and in the way that you think it is.
Yes, because the universe has to then put all the pieces together. You won't suddenly receive. I mean, I think there are some people who have spontaneous healings.
Yes.
You yourself have witnessed it, but most people potentially couldn't. Their brain isn't wired to handle a completely new reality in an instant. That new reality has to be paced and brought into their world in a way that they can actually process it and accept it.
And the same thing with the planet. If the planet, we're not equipped for everybody on the planet to wake up at once. It's just not equipped that way. But if you ask for it to help me be more in love, in compassion, in these beautiful gratitude, right? I like to say, thank you for helping me find awe in the simplest things. And they will help you do that. So they will help you with that. And they will help you in the way that's best for you. And this is why you find compassion for other people they may need to go through a few more dark nights of the soul, so to speak, before they get there, because that's what they need. But the key is that you want it to sustain. And so if it happens too quickly, and we saw this actually when we were helping people heal, if you heal them too quick, a lot of times they haven't changed anything. They go back to the same habits. So that might be another reason why it needs to be a little bit slower, so that it sustains and you keep that mental, because it's about changing those mental habits, right? Those loops of thought that you keep, to changing them from fear-based to more love-based. And that takes a little bit of time.
And can we talk about the they that you keep referring to for a second? The quantum field, the angels, but I know that that one of the things that you mentioned in the books is that the Aboriginals are often completely silent because they're communicating in is it the dream time? Is that what they refer to it as?
That's another thing. Gets a little complicated. They are telepathic, and it doesn't matter. There's no time and space when you could call it another dimension. It's a higher frequency. A dimension is not a place. It's a frequency. It's a vibration. And they were operating at much higher frequencies and vibrations, so they were able to access these other dimensions. Okay, and love is a higher dimension. This planet is a third dimensional frequency at the moment, and that is where we have third dimensional tendencies of depression, anger, angst, stress. That's a third dimensional tendency. And so you want to start getting into the compassion, the love, the forgiveness. Those are higher frequencies. And when your body's in a higher frequency, it's in a more vibrant state. And you want to sustain it. If you feel extreme gratitude, you've just tapped into fourth dimensional frequency, possibly even fifth. And the key is to learn how to stay there rather than get pulled back down again, which is very easy to do when you're in a third dimensional existence. So they have learned, and Gary was kind of surprised by this when he went to stay with them. he said, I think it was like age 3, they start connecting. You might call it meditation, you might call it dream time, but they start spending half of their time in that dream time connection, connecting into these higher frequencies, these higher vibrations, and realizing that this is an illusion. That world is more real to them than this world. And that they, when you do that, when you move into that higher frequency, that higher vibration, it's really easy to find acceptance, to find love, that's to let go of the fears. And so you start paying attention to, what am I thinking? What am I eating? Who am I around? Because it's constantly either raising or lowering your frequency and vibration. And when you raise in frequency and vibration, you are at peace. You are in acceptance, recognizing everything serves a purpose. And it's a lot easier to just accept what other people are going through, recognizing with love and compassion that's what they need for their growth. And what they are experiencing is exactly what they need for their growth. And I'm experiencing what I need for my growth. And sometimes we just want to get through these lessons, right? And get out of that classroom and move on. And so this is where you can ask for help, because the mind is a powerful tool. It's a powerful tool, but it doesn't always know how to get us where we want to go. It doesn't always know how to heal. It doesn't always know what's the best relationship or the best career. But when you connect to this higher consciousness, it can guide you. It can guide you as to what is in your best interest and how to do that. And the mind is designed to follow the guidance, but it really wasn't designed. The mind wasn't designed to be at the head of the table all the time. And this is what is happening in the world, is we're showing and experiencing what happens when the minds are in control. A lot of fear-based, a lot of negativity, and that's quite the human journey and human experiment, if you will, or experience. And we're learning how to tap into this love, this higher consciousness. And this is where you realize there's a lot of help, whether it's connecting to your own soul, connecting to your guardian angel, connecting to a higher consciousness, whether that's God, goddess, divine source, whatever that is for you.
And that guidance comes in the way of signs, synchronicities, inner knowings, sudden understandings of what you need to do, clarity. Is there any other ways that that they will communicate in this
they're
3D world?
constantly communicating. It's just that most people don't recognize the signs. All right, let me tell you what happened to me 2 days ago. No, this was yesterday. I went to this grocery store and got groceries, came out, and I live by the water. I live in the islands in the Puget Sound area. Came out, there's seagulls everywhere. And I came out, and it was like my car had been targeted by seagulls. It was covered in bird crap, right? And I thought, oh, whoa, what was that about? And then I realized they were just like, you got to keep your sense of humor, right? That's what they were trying to show me, is that you've just got to keep a sense of humor. So when I saw the car, you're like, oh man, what a mess. And I realized, no, that is a perfect sign to keep your sense of humor about something that I had been going through earlier in the week that I got a little bit wrapped up in. And they're like, no, this is just a learning lesson. Just, accept it. Don't get hung up on it, and keep your sense of humor about it. So,
Well, I love that you saw it that way, because if someone is having a troubling week and then they see their car covered in bird crap, they can also be like, oh, great, just one more thing I have to deal with.
Of course, yeah.
The fact that you are processing in that way shows that you are existing in that higher frequency, because you're seeing it as a humor, an indication that you should have more
for
humor
really
in
what
your
it
life.
is. Yeah.
Rather than something that's just compounding what's going on. I love that.
Yeah.
And so these signs and synchronicities, these are something that the Aboriginals are also very in touch with. And you said that they're telepathic. Does that mean, are they hearing words in each other's brains? Like, is
No,
that
it's
how they communicate?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question because that's something that I've kind of developed over the years as I started communicating to my team. Telepathy is like this download where you just get this mass amount of information in a split second. And I can tell it's my team because they'll answer before I've even finished asking the question in my mind. That's another way that I get to know. And sometimes it might just be a succinct word or two, but other times you just have this knowledge and just like, I don't know, I didn't know this a second ago, but I know it now. And that happens a lot when I'm doing, sessions with people because I'm getting guidance from their teams as well. So it's just, you start becoming aware. That's really what it's about. I don't know if you've ever been pregnant. When you're pregnant, you notice all the pregnant women around all of a sudden, and you notice all the children and the babies that you hadn't noticed before. It's the same thing here. Or you get a car, right? And then you start noticing that car everywhere, or that color. You start becoming more aware. And you can ask them, thank you for helping me become more aware of your guidance and the messages. Because the guidance with the car covered in poop, it was a message, but I didn't pick up on it immediately until I got home. And then it took a little bit where I'm like, oh, I see what you guys are trying to tell me. Very funny, cute. And now I've decided I'm not cleaning it because it's such a great reminder every time I see that car to just start laughing, right? That it's just, that's
It's
life.
so ridiculous.
It's so
Yeah.
ridiculous. Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. So how then did you use this skill and this ability to help create the thunderstorm when you were
Mm,
in the outback with the women? First of all, could you just explain a little bit about that journey, what it was like, and how it
yeah.
culminated in this really transformative experience of collective minds?
Yeah, that was a real honor. I can't remember it was the year Gary passed or the year after. I think it was 2008. He passed in 2007, and in 2008, I was one of I think it was about 2 dozen white women who were and I'm using white women because the Aboriginals had invited us from all over the world, and they invited me from the United States to join them in ceremonies, and they had never done that before. And it was just the women, and they had opened it up, and because of my connection to Gary, I was invited. And I went having no clue about what was going on. And I think, like most people, you don't realize that you do have powerful energy. We all do. We just we aren't aware of it. We don't tap into it. We don't utilize it. And I didn't realize when I came to the Outback that I was contributing energies that to this powerful group. And it was really interesting because, especially here in the States, everything is very time oriented, right? And in the Outback, it wasn't like that at all. They don't say at 5 o'clock we're going to have ceremony. We're going to have ceremony when it's right, when the energies are building and building. And it was one of those experiences where they kept raising our frequencies, whether we were aware of it or not, helping us raise our vibration and frequencies until they became very powerful, and it helped me certainly see things differently. What I experienced, and I can't talk about the ceremonies out of respect for them, but I can tell you two of the experiences I had. Well, one of the things is we did create powerful rainstorms that had not been that strong for years, and they kept coming around the camp. It was really fascinating watching those circle around our camp. And they said it was a combined energies that created that. They needed the rain. That's what they were doing. But the other thing that happened was I recognized, and I talk about this in the Awakening, Aboriginal Secrets of Awakening. You feel, you don't just intellectually know it, but you feel the oneness, that everything is connected. You just feel it just kind of meld into everything. And I could also feel the passion of love from Mother Earth for us. We were her children, so to speak. And you could really feel that passion to the point of just bringing tears to you. And it was a beautiful insight that you get when you let go of the mind's stuff, right? And you move into these higher degrees of awareness and consciousness, and you can feel it. It's powerful.
Mm. It sounds, I mean, when I read that part of the book, I was like, oh, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to be invited. It's because I do understand, about how sacred ceremony is, and that's something that we learn, that there is a lot that that we won't see as a non-Aboriginal Australian, that I won't
Hmm.
be invited to see and that I won't understand. And they do share with us what they can, and it's always amazing. And I've grown up witnessing their dance and the smoke ceremonies, if that's what
Hmm.
it can be called, and it's always been so fascinating. But also, I know that we're only being given the tip of the iceberg,
Yes.
and and I just wonder how do we bridge? I guess that's it. You and Gary, you're helping to bridge these two worlds because they seem so far apart.
Yeah.
This sort of 3D reality and this 5D reality, and I guess, yeah, how do we merge? How do we become more like them, even
Yeah,
though we're
I
not
I love that.
necessarily allowed to witness what they do and how they do it?
Yeah, I love that you would ask that. And it really is about recognizing that we're all equal as souls. We're all equal. We're just going through different experiences depending on what it is our soul wants us to learn. And that's the thing, is you're here to learn something, and that your soul will provide lessons and opportunities for you. Free will planet, it's up to you whether you learn it or not, or whether you're going to go the long, painful, drown out way, which apparently I needed to a couple times, right? I almost died twice. But what it's about is letting go of fear and negativity and moving more into love. And the more you move into love and light, the higher you raise in these frequencies. And nature can connect you. Being around trees can connect you and raise your frequency and vibration. Having loving thoughts, having, paying attention to what you're eating, what you're thinking, who you're with. Are they vibrating high or low? Because that's going to affect you and your energy. So you keep becoming more and more aware of letting go. It's either fear or it's love. And sometimes the guiding question is, what would love do? And sometimes love says no. And sometimes love sets boundaries up out of self love, right? You don't become the victim, or the rescuer out of love. You just become compassionate master and let others learn in the way they need to learn. So you recognize everything here is to help us learn and grow. And I like to move through life with as much ease, grace, and joy as possible. So when I get sidelined, you know, hit up the side of the head, it's like, okay, I'm paying attention, I'm listening. But for the most part, they will keep bringing you these messages. They'll keep bringing you the same lessons over and over and over until you get it. And here's an example. I lost a dear family member to smoking. He ended up with a brain tumor, and it was really painful to be there and watch him and everybody else go through this. And I got really upset with the tobacco companies for putting out a toxic product that could be addictive and possibly create death and cancer. And I got upset with some of my family members who were continuing to smoke, because I thought, I'm going to lose you guys too. And I had this non-acceptance, this judgment, and this anger around smoking. And what happened was, as I kept being surrounded by smokers, couldn't seem to get away from the smokers, until I finally realized, okay, that's just another way that they're learning about what happens when you honor and nurture and respect the body, and what happens when you don't. It's just another method in this classroom. And so when I finally I didn't like it, but I accepted it. When I finally accepted it, the smokers went away, right? I didn't need to be in that classroom anymore. So some people still stay in the classroom, and that's fine. There's so much compassion and love, that's fine. But I would like, I really want to graduate. I want to check this one off the list and move on. And trust me, there are endless lessons, but I was really ready to be done with that one. So I asked for help in letting go of this, because again, the mind doesn't know how to do that very well. We know we're sabotaging, but we can't seem to let go of it. Ask for help. Thank you for helping me move beyond this. And I like to say, in an easy, graceful, fun way, right? And so I got those insights. Not only did I get the insight and the awareness, but I also got the energy, the aha moments, and the energy to move me out of that. That's the difference. You're not just working with the head. the tool, you're also operating with tremendous assistance from the other side, which is available to all of us. We just have to ask, because it's a free will planet. You can, be surrounded by smokers the rest of your life if that's what you want. But that's another reason why does this keep showing up in my life? And if it keeps showing up and you keep resisting it, it could possibly turn into disease. So this is where you want to start getting back to, like what the Aboriginal people said, the emotional core. There's your homework.
Yes. So life is a series of lessons.
Yes.
We can either choose to learn them or not. And if we don't, we may have to come back around again and learn the same lessons. Is past lives something that the Aboriginal culture believe in?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And let me just say, not out of fear base, but just if you don't get it, usually it comes back a little harder. So it's in your face, right? So that you can't ignore it. So that it makes it a little bit harder to resist. And so, yes, this is why it's not like karma is a bad thing. It's about experiencing something so that you move through with more love and compassion because you've been through that, right? You've cleared that. You understand that. It's all done with tremendous love. And I think it's important to remember that the light, especially with what's happening on the planet right now, the light always overcomes the dark. And that the reason that planet Earth, we're so brave for coming here. It's a tough school, but also it's a fabulous teaching planet, if you will, because there is dark and light, and it makes it much easier to see things. It's a lot easier to become aware of things. It's like a painting. The contrast make things more obvious. So we need the dark and the light, but it makes it much easier to see. And having these things come over and over in your face, in your life, will help you realize this is a dust bunny under the bed that needs to be cleaned out.
Yeah, and I think my mum asked me the other day, she said, what does it mean when people say they're woke? And in that moment, I was like, how do I explain this to her? And I feel like I'm starting to understand through listening to you reiterate something that I already know, is that as we learn these lessons, we shed something and we become lighter. And it's through that process of becoming lighter and lighter and lighter and learning lesson after lesson after lesson and acceptance that we touch that frequency that is awakening.
Yes. Yes. And what you're doing is you're letting go of fears. They may not even be conscious, but you're letting go of fears. And so as you let go of those fears, which creates negativity and toxicity, right? But again, it's either fear or love. As you let go of that fear, it helps you move up lighter and lighter and brighter and brighter. So being woke is that you just have much more awareness of what the mind is doing and how it's very clever. It's very programmed, and you start waking up to what it's doing and say, thanks for helping, but this is what we're going to do. We're going to ask for help. We're going to accept it. We're going to move through this and not get caught in that. We're so used to being imprisoned by the minds. We've decorated these cells quite lovely, right? We're very comfortable in them to the point where they're making it uncomfortable to stay there anymore. So that to let go. And that's when you find that peace, that joy, that love, that compassion that's so beautiful that it doesn't matter, again, what others are doing and what the world is doing, because you are kind of in a higher frequency and vibration, recognizing they're learning the way they need to.
Yes. Yes. And so at what point, and I don't know if this is part of the Aboriginal teachings, have we learned all our lessons? And when we have, where do we go?
Well, that's quite an interesting question, isn't it? But let's just say that planet Earth really serves a purpose at helping us gain awareness of what we still need to let go of. And this is why the soul will set up lessons, people, soul contracts. Isn't it beautiful who's in your family because you don't really get away from them. So you have these soul contracts with certain people that they will provide opportunities for growth, right?
Mm.
And so, and that's when you realize they are perfect, right? I moved into this beautiful home that I love, and all of a sudden, I get a couple of neighbors who have barking dogs. And I'm like, oh, I can't, I'm really super sensitive to the noise. And I'm like, can you help stop that? And the guys are like, oh, this is perfect for you.
But what is it perfect to teach you how to assimilate into, I don't know, perfect for what?
It's perfect for learning how to have acceptance and not be triggered by that. And so with their help, again, I would have a hard time doing that on my own, but asking for help, and with their help, I have learned to just, because some people can hear dogs barking and it doesn't bother them at all. And that's what I'm asking for, because otherwise it triggers me into annoyance and negativity. And be patient with yourself when that happens. But they're helping me so that it doesn't bother me.
Mm.
It's like the smokers, right? Oh, we can send more dogs if we need to, you know.
Yes,
We have
yes.
so many more opportunities for you if you need it, but it's about, there's that fear, right? That control about quiet. And so this was a perfect opportunity for me to learn to just let go, because the mind was grabbing on and latching onto that barking rather than just letting it go. So with
It's
their
very,
help,
yeah, meditative. And were you able to let go, and as a result, the dogs no longer
sometimes,
bark as much?
sometimes I'm there, sometimes I'm not, but I recognize that it's not about. So I've handed it over. Thank you for helping me with this. If I'm supposed to say something, thank you for helping me do it in a loving manner rather than an angry, fear-based way, right? But right now they're like, no, right now you're not supposed to say anything, but we'll let you know. And if I am, they will be there helping me do it in the right manner if it becomes to the point where, again, the boundaries need to be set. But right now, what I'm learning is greater mastery over being triggered by that and trying to control, because it's that control that's fear based.
Mm.
Yeah.
So it really is surrendering to something bigger than yourself, whether you term that as God or the universe or the quantum field. It's having an active relationship with something, with the other.
Yes. And realizing that what is brought to you is here for a reason and a purpose. What am I resisting and why am I resisting it? And when you stop resisting, that's the key, right? That's the
Mm.
mind, right? And so you learn to stop resisting what is brought to you, and then you don't need it anymore as a lesson, as a tool.
Yes. And so we've been talking about this as in the means of healing and working through things like blocks and things that are holding you back and attachments. Is it possible to use this connection for, I mean, manifestation? It's very much a word, but asking for the things you're trying to create, or connecting with your soul's purpose and expressing that.
Absolutely. And that's what a lot of the time the Aboriginal people were doing when they were in their dreamtime state, is they were creating. They were manifesting. And they will tell you that we don't really, that was one of the things they said, is we don't recognize how to really use our minds. We're not really using our minds in the way that they're intended. They're very powerful, especially when you get into the subconscious and you're manifesting and creating, focusing on what you want, not what you don't want. um, and that we used to all be telepathic. That's what they called the old language, where you just were communicating without language. You just had this. And the Aboriginal people, the ones that are secluded in the outback that I'm talking about, not all of them, but the ones that I'm talking about that are operating more in a fifth dimensional frequency, they've never lost that connection. They've always stayed connection to water. Where's the water? The plants. What are the plants here to help us with? These other dimensions, in creating and manifesting and communicating. And they said that when we started speaking out loud a long time ago, we lost that telepathic ability. And it's very chaotic to speak out loud. And it's we've lost that old language, but you can get it back again by tuning in. everybody's telepath. You know how you're very connected to your spouse or your child or whatever. You have that connection, and it's a lot easier to be telepathic, and you will start recognizing thoughts. A lot of times we think there are thoughts. They're not. They're being planted, or a song will come up and the words to that song, it's like, oh, that's exactly what I needed to hear. Time to say goodbye or whatever. And that's what Gary was showing me after he passed. He would pop these songs into my head. There were our songs, and if you listen to the lyrics, there was meaning behind it. So you start building and building that skill, and you start developing and expanding that ability. And we all have that. We just don't tune into it as often as the Aboriginal tribes people do.
Yeah, and so you have three books. Two of them are about your experiences with the Aboriginals and the techniques that they taught you, but your third book, which is, I'm just reading here, it's Angels in Waiting. I haven't read it yet, but this is very much about what we're talking about, isn't it? Connecting
Yeah.
with your spirit guides. Could you talk to us about your journey writing that book and what you hope to share with everybody through those pages?
Okay. So the Angels in Waiting I ended up doing a lot of healing sessions for many years, and I could see where people were getting hung up, where they were getting stuck, whether it was career, relationships, their job, their soul's intentions, mission, that sort of thing. And so I could see the commonalities, and I decided to write, well, they guided me to write this book on how to move through that, how to get help, and and also how to bring that mind on board in a powerful way so that it's not sabotaging you, but it's actually assisting, and doing it with guardian angels or spirit guides. And there is a difference. Maybe ancestors who have loved ones who have passed over. There is a difference. um, Spirit guides have lived human existence, and they know what that's like. And you might have a spirit guide come in now and then, depending on what you're doing and what the needs are. But you do have, every single person, whether you're aware of it or believe in it, has at least one guardian angel by your side 24/7. And they are the easiest to communicate with. They are the easiest to bond with. You don't need to go beyond them. You certainly can, but they're like the first responders. They're like the gatekeepers. And so it's much easier to communicate with that guardian angel, and just recognize that they're always there, waiting to assist, waiting to help, but they need to be invited, because we are operating in a third dimensional planet that has free will. And because they're operating in these higher frequencies and vibrations, of course they need to be invited in. They can't just come and manipulate things, right? They have to be invited to assist. And when you invite them to assist, you let go of the how is this going to happen, when is this going to happen, because that's the mind, right? It wants to know, how are we going to get there and when are we going to get there? You hand it over and allow them to assist you. Free will, you can choose to follow their guidance or not, but I have found that following their guidance leads to a lot less struggle and pain. We're creating more pain and struggle than our souls really intended. And we were designed to have this help. And the beautiful part is that every time you allow them to assist you, and we're only working with beautiful, benevolent beings of love and light, but every time you allow them to assist you, they are growing in love because they're serving out of love. So when you grow, it allows them to grow. When you allow them to assist you, it allows them to grow. So it's this beautiful symbiotic relationship where we were always designed to have help. It's up to you whether you choose to use it or not. I can't imagine not using their help. It's huge. They've told me. So when we wrote Angels in Waiting, I had a beautiful co-writer in New York City, and she was assisting. And the guides had told me, when you allow us to help, it's like operating at 5 amps of power on your own. When you allow us to help, it's like amping up to 5,000 amps of power, right? And so I would send this to Judy, the co-writer, and she kept changing it to 500. And I'm like, they're telling me it's 5,000, right? I just couldn't believe that. I'm like, yeah, it does make a big difference. So yeah. That was,
I believe that it is 5,000 because I had, I think it was back in 2018, I had an experience where I shut it all off. I told them all to go away. I said, that's it, I'm done, because I was also part of my initiation as a healer. I was learning about the dark side of the other realms as
Yeah.
well. And it was too much, and I got overwhelmed, and I just told everybody to F off. And then it got very quiet. And I was like, oh, this is nice. And I was just going about my life. And I was just, but about 6 to 9 months in, I was like, gosh, there's no magic. Like, there's been no signs, no synchronicities, no little like special winks, no like, oh, here, just something I've been thinking about suddenly manifesting. And I was like, oh, this is kind of boring. And
Yeah.
also dull and quiet and not exciting and a little bit lonely. And so then I was like, all right, you can all come back now. I
And they're,
welcome you back.
yeah, yeah, they were always there just waiting. I know.
They were just watching and they were like, all right, you do you. You do you. We'll be here when you're ready.
I know. I know. There's been time. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've gone through that and I've gotten really angry at them. And I know that I'm not going to feel their answers until I calm down, right? Because you're pulling yourself down into these lower frequencies and vibrations. And it's much easier to communicate and hear them or feel them or whatever when you're in a higher frequency. They have to lower theirs. We have to raise ours to kind of meet in the middle. But I think one of the misconceptions people have, and we talk about this in Angels in Waiting, is that most people expect when they, expectation, that word comes up all the time, when you decide to start communicating that you're going to start seeing them or hearing them. And that is rarely the case. Everybody, every single person is clairsentient, where you feel with your body. And you can start developing that even more, where, some people get goosebumps, some people get tingling, some people get that gut feeling, whatever that, but very few people will actually see them or hear them. But you can start developing that clairsentience. And one of the things that I talk about in Angels in Waiting is when you get a thought that's directly there in your mind when you first wake up, during the middle of the night or first thing in the morning, if there is a thought directly there, that is likely guidance from the other side. It's that second or third thought. Okay, now that's the mind engaged, right? That's how you can tell. It's an instantaneous, quick thing. And if you do I call it a 3-second gut check. If you wonder whether something is a yes or a no, or it's right or not for you, if you know in 3 seconds, if you go beyond the 3 seconds, okay, now the mind is engaged. And if you're not getting an answer or it's not clear to you, tell them, ask them to make it more clear to you, more obvious, and they will. It'll come. There might be divine timing involved, but they will bring it to you. And if you've missed it, and they're very, very good at communicating, that is not a problem for them. If you miss it, they'll bring it again. And if you miss it, they'll bring it again. And they might bring it through a different person in a different way, but they will get that message to you. And if it's needed, you will get it, even if you wake up in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's there.
Yes. It's that I've had that happen to me where I've received some guidance and I've questioned it. And
Yeah.
I've like, okay, if this is really what I'm meant to be doing, show me again, but like hit me across the face with it.
Oh, you're so brave.
Like show me in a way that I absolutely can't deny, because I'm kind of unsure about this.
Yeah.
And then I get it and I'm like, oh damn, all right, here we go.
Yeah.
And then I jump.
Yeah. 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 I try to tell them, I've learned not to tell them how to do their job, right?
Yeah.
And how I expect this message to come a certain way. It'll come. There's no denying it. And when I first started going through this, it took a little while before you start trusting yourself, because the mind wants to negate it. And I remember starting to write down things that happen. It's like, there is no way you can explain this one, right? This is a synchronicity that was so clear, so obvious. And I started listing them. And then it got to the point where, okay, this is happening. It's just so
Mm.
clear this is happening. And when my mind would go into that negating thing aspect, then I would just look at my list again and say, see, you are connecting. Trust yourself. I think that's a hard one for people, is to trust themselves. Thank you for helping me trust myself. Thank you for helping me gain more clarity. Thank you for helping me gain more confidence in you and in me. Ask them for help every step of the way.
Mm. Wow, this is just so wonderful. I'm absolutely loving connecting with you. And how can people get more of you in their life? They can read your books. I'm sure there's YouTube videos and other podcasts, but can people work with you directly?
I'm no longer doing direct consultations anymore because I have the information there for people. I'm shifting my work, but there's an online course. There are books up on my website that give all the information they need, because it got to the point where it's just a bit much. So it's there, it's accessible. There's a lot of free information on my website, and that the website is holzwellness.com. HOLZ as in
Yeah,
Z,
we'll pop it in the
right?
show notes so people can just look at the show
Yeah.
notes and click right through.
Yep, wholeswellness.com. There's a lot of free information, a lot of really good information in the blog section about angels, about healing, about Aboriginal people. I mean, it's we tried to. I was guided as to what to put up to help people. So that's yeah. That's we tried to get this information out the way they wanted it in the best way that would resonate to them. So it's all there.
Yeah, okay, great. So, anybody listening who is absolutely feeling the tingles through their spine, receiving this information, can go and dive deep on your website and read books and probably just ask for their own awakening.
Yeah, yeah, it's there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Robbie. This has
Oh,
just been such a wonderful chat.
I've loved it. Thank you so much. Thank you for the work that you do. It's very powerful and beautiful.
Thank you for supporting the Healing Cocoon podcast. It's your listening ears that make it all possible. What also makes it possible is if you rate, subscribe, and review the show. Reviews in particular are really cool, not only because they help our ratings, but also because I have no way of knowing how the podcast is positively impacting your life. So if you feel like sharing, please do. I would love to hear from you.